Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to projectCD.Chronicles. A channel user asked me if I could review another development tool for the Commodore 64. Normally, let's say I use CBM Program Studio here, although when it comes to development, basically for Commodore 64 assembly, and like with all other C languages, I use only Notepad and work exclusively from the command line. I only find it convenient perhaps for a small portion of programs written in BASIC to use CBM Program Studio and compile them. Despite this, these tools undoubtedly offer many features. Now this won't be a comparison, but I wanted to introduce you, again at the request of a channel user, to this Commodore 64 Studio, which was written by Georg Rottensteiner. Development began in 2011 and is still ongoing today, having reached version 8.1. Here we can clearly see Georg Rottensteiner's personal web page as it prominently features the C64 Studio. It's an integrated development environment, commonly known as an IDE, based on .NET and allows for programming, as it explicitly states here, in BASIC v2, but also effectively using assembly with the ACME syntax. Among other things, it has numerous other features and then allows you to create programs in binary format, tape, disk format, and other options. Additionally, C64 Studio conveniently includes a series of built-in tools that we will also look at one by one, if not in detail, such as a banner editor, a charset editor, a char screen editor, a graphics editor, a map editor, a sprite editor, and many other features that make it unique. Many of these features are also found in the CBM Program Studio, while others are unique characteristics. Both tools are valid options for programming, specifically for retro programming on the Commodore 64. From a programming perspective, we can create a new project and at this point choose what we want to implement. Of course, we will start with what is obviously a basic program. Now, here too, as you can see, you can enlarge it with the keys, and then basically all we do is save it. I usually put it in the temp directory. By the way, Marco Bercomi's Osiris demos are also there. And then using this additional tool here with compile, it creates what is in fact the actual test program. Now we go and get it from the temp folder and we can launch it directly in our emulator to see the result. Of course, we'll also take a look at some other features as well. And here, in any case, the program itself is exactly as we would expect it to be, functioning precisely as intended. Here we close it, and then we can get back to our main topic of discussion, and we can also readily use the syntax that is specifically related to BASIC, as well as other various BASIC dialects. This isn't exactly a core feature of CBM Program Studio itself, but rather something that it fully supports and integrates seamlessly, and we also find the well-known Simon's Basic here, which is quite a useful addition. I've already run this particular process. It should also capture the audio output as expected. As you can see here, of course I'll cut it. And as you can see from this recording, it has correctly compiled the program for the Commodore 128, in which using this basic 7.0, it directly created the PRG file. So it's really simple. Good, and from this point too, we can effectively run our machine language program, which meticulously colors the entire screen black. It is, in essence, our exact program, and its execution is accomplished through the compile function simply by precisely specifying the initial starting address. Here, we have a system call, SUAS instruction, located at the specific address 49152, but it is not explicitly listed because you would typically need to create the corresponding basic line first. However, this is considered standard practice in programming for virtually all, let's say, modern programming languages, and that is precisely what we have observed. Among other features, we have two types of debuggers that can be selected, a tiny internal debugger and, of course, debugging with WinVice, as we can see, but also with CBM Program Studio, where all our labels in particular are referenced globally, and all the various addresses that we will use are called up. So this part is quite useful. Now let's take a look at this additional debugging mode, because here, of course, we launch it. The debugger is active in this case. We run it with C's 49152, and as you can see, it has been caught here by our debugger. Earlier here, I set two types of breakpoints, one at 49151 and another at the second one, and here we can see the program counter and the stack frame. Of course, at this moment, the various status registers and the register itself. In this case, well, I could have used a different number, but the A register is loaded with 0, and it's clearly possible to continue with our debugging process. And obviously, at this point here, we can see through our breakpoint what the machine is doing, and you can see that, in fact, as we continue, we've produced the correct result with debugging. Obviously here we can also inspect the memory, set other types of breakpoints, and like all debuggers, we also have a watch window where we can see the various labels, variables, and so on, but we can come back to this later if needed. Among the other features, though I'm not sure if I can enlarge it here, we also have a disassembly view linked to the binary. Of course, we can load it directly from Prova 3, and we see that it gives us the disassembly of our program, so we can study it in more detail and, of course, select and set the other parameters as needed. A quick and important note regarding the setup wizard: it only allows us to carefully select the specific emulator we're truly interested in utilizing, and also to meticulously set all the various and diverse preferences for colors and palettes, as well as the overall appearance of the fundamental basic language and all the other essential commands. And by the way, it's also possible to integrate GUI for version control of the various projects, because here we have two options. Technically, we can create a project with one or more files, but we can also create solutions which are a combination of one or more projects. Obviously, since I'm more used to the other one, I was looking at the various other features. First of all, I recommend using the online help because it's really well done. It allows us to go from getting started to a whole section on stars, assemblers, and their extensions, basic, a description of the editor, and also a whole series of tools that let us manage both projects and solutions. In particular, these will then call up basic tools such as here. As you can see, I'm creating a null. Clearly, I'm making a sprite, but also here I'm obviously redefining the character set. And by the way, there's another really important new feature I noticed inside, which I haven't seen in CBM Program Studio, or at least I haven't seen it yet, a whole section dedicated to character sets. But what I wanted to show you was this part, because, for example, here we have the charset editor. Of course, we can import it, but after we've defined all the various characters, we can export it, and this is very important. It asks us how we want to export it, as a binary file, as an image file, or as simple basic data. Let's say, for instance, that we want to export this particular data in this specific way. You can clearly see that in this initial part, it's truly exceptionally simple and straightforward, primarily because we are essentially instructing the system to meticulously load the entire character set directly into the available data memory. And so by utilizing a very simple and efficient basic programming routine, we can actually load this information directly into the computer's active memory and subsequently redefine the individual characters with great precision. However, we also possess the capability to perform this operation directly. Perhaps you might perceive it more clearly and distinctly if I were to significantly enlarge the display. No, unfortunately, it still doesn't adequately show it to me. This can be done through the powerful assembler, and there are indeed several distinct and varied methods through which you can effectively export, so to speak, all these meticulously defined characters that we have painstakingly created. But you also possess the exact same valuable option, as you can readily observe, to export the sprite data. I can instruct the system to export the sprite as raw data specifically formatted for BASIC, but at the very same time. And here we encounter a whole comprehensive series of intricate encoding options and schemes. It also possesses the remarkable ability to convert this data for use with low-level machine language, offering significant flexibility. Obviously, you then need to set the starting location where you want to take the various data from the sprite, and once you've saved those elements, you can insert them into projects that in turn will be called up in your solutions. And in my considered opinion, this is something truly quite nice, because I honestly hadn't found it on the other side. At least I hadn't seen it yet. Perhaps I'll take a closer look, because clearly for this particular part here, I still consistently use external tools, and well, I had become accustomed to exporting them in the way I had originally learned. Is that perfectly clear? Then, as you can see, there are other features as well, like importing various types of images, and so it will actually process them. Here, we can choose, for example, the method we think is most appropriate. This is a PNG image. I think it also loads JPEG and a few other formats, and then it gives us our image directly in the way we prefer. Also, in this section, obviously clip image at 320 by 160, clip image screen size, and here too it should give us the option to export everything. In this case, we choose to export as assembly, and you can see that our image is already prepared with all the color data, all the screen data, because clearly for high resolution images, the colors need to be taken both from the screen data and the color data, as you know, and then all the information related to. So this too is, let us say, quite remarkable in terms of its features. What I haven't yet seen, or at least I don't seem to readily perceive, is any dedicated management for SFX, that is to say sounds and so on. But of course, it is entirely possible to make up for this with external tools. Now, clearly, given the current timing, and also with the upcoming summer holidays and the significant week of Ferragosto rapidly approaching, I'd say we can comfortably stop our discussion here for now. This has really just been a comprehensive overview of this remarkable Commodore 64 Studio, providing a foundational understanding of its capabilities. I've only shown you some of the basic and fundamental features. Depending on your comments, we could come back to this and maybe go into more detail on some features, and why not, maybe even load up some projects. In fact, I've seen on the website that it's also been used for competition projects, so it really is a fully fledged and valid tool. Exactly. There was a game for the Commodore 64 that was presented in a game competition focused on sports in 2017. Written, of course, by Georgia Roth Steiner. I think that's how you pronounce it. And it was really programmed precisely with our, not CP/M Programmer Studio, but with our Commodore 64 Studio. Obviously, this is the game Downhill Challenge. By the way, here we need to download the game. And as you can see here, there's also a release for the Commodore Studio for ARM. And this is the one that clearly I downloaded myself. Written by George Rothsteiner, graphics by Ismaila, and this is the little game that was presented at the 2017 game competition. What can I say? Well, I'll leave you with this image, and thank you for spending this short time with me for the duration of this video. On the occasion of what we can't really call the holidays, but let's say the summer break, we'll definitely see each other again after Ferragosto or during Ferragosto week with new initiatives and new videos about our beloved Penguin, our beloved Commodore, and also many new programming topics that might interest us. Thank you for staying with me up to this point, and we'll see each other again soon in Project CD Chronicles on Claudio's channel.